full of information you don't want to miss. A veteran show for all veterans. Welcome Major Andrew White, retired, and Marine helicopter pilot Chuck Wright.
Hey.
Hoorah! And welcome to another edition of Kilroy's Conversation, where we've got ourselves a pretty good show today going on with a lot of fun stuff. Getting ready for our big military month coming up.
I wondered where you were going.
I was trying to go for the dramatic
yeah,
effect.
you failed miserably.
Yeah, I know. See, that's why they hire professionals to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Radio. We're on podcasts.
We're on podcasts.
So you get what we get. I was trying to go for.
You're stuck with what you got.
Yeah,
Deal with it, folks.
With this nice little dramatic, way of doing it. But I was halfway through, I'm like, I lost
failing miserably.
It failed miserably.
So what my partner in crime is talking about is we are rapidly approaching the 6th of November and the Commanders Classic in DFW, where Air Force is going to play Army. And as this is shaping up, unfortunately, for my guys at Navy, because I am a big Navy fan, this looks like it will be for the Commander-in-Chief Trophy.
It very well could be last stuff. And by mentioning that, I don't know if you saw last week, I was down in Houston, and I watched, because my daughter goes to school in Houston, we saw Navy versus Houston.
Oh, very nice. Game. And Navy almost pulled it off.
Navy, I know we got a lot of stuff to talk about, but we start off with football.
It's football, because
we got to do
stuff.
It's good stuff, And we talked about it on our last show about these. Okay?
A lot. Yeah.
And as an Army guy, it's, a little hard to root for Navy. But you know what? Our brothers in arms, and they played a great
I was going to say, when the service academies are playing, I'm pulling for them.
Yeah.
Against anybody.
I was
maybe Texas.
I was kind of because my daughter goes to Houston. They're playing Houston, so publicly.
Does she go to Cougar High?
Yeah, she goes to.
I didn't know that.
She goes there. We
like to mock Cougar High. Shout out to my boy Mark Corwin.
Yeah,
Recon Marine. Owner of Freedom Hot Sauce.
Oh, yeah.
And Cougar High grad.
And like I said, it was a great, great game. You know what? 3/4 of the game, Navy Academy was all in. And I will tell you this much. Defensively, I think Navy could play with a lot of people. They looked, their defense looked awesome. I don't know his name because I couldn't see from where our seats were, but number 54.
View from the cheap seats.
Yes, number 54, the linebacker over there. Man, that dude played with heart.
I tell you, that is one of the things that I love about watching the Service Academy guys, watching them play, is they play with so much heart.
Oh.
It is the very best of what college football is supposed to be all about.
Hands down.
Yeah.
But it went down to our point that we talked about last week is when Houston started opening up the air attack, you could see as well-conditioned as these young men were. And let's face it, the private service academy kids are in the best physical condition.
So I'm going to do a little bit of a tangent, but to come back to this point.
This show, a tangent?
This show, a tangent. Oh, my God, here we go.
Quick,
we're going to have to get a sound for going down the rabbit hole, but it will come directly to what you just said. But I was reading about the quarterback down at Texas, his name Casey Thompson. Very interesting guy, member of the Kiowa tribe. He is truly Native American.
Right.
And by being a member of the tribe, he's at least 25% Kiowa.
Right.
And there are a lot of guys who will claim, well, I'm of Indian descent. That's not exactly the same thing. So they've got all these rules, and a lot of them, like Sam Bradford leaped to mind. It was considered a member of the Cherokee tribe, although it's really barely Native Indian. But and I understand all that. But this gentleman, legitimately, and a fascinating young man by all accounts, a super individual. But he was talking in an interview, and he described how he gets ready for a game. And I want to contrast this to the schedule of the Naval Academy guys. Now, granted, he's the quarterback, and I'm sure the quarterback at Navy, I don't know when he sleeps, but I'm sure he gets in more film study. But as a general rule, all the players are only allowed to practice 20 hours a week by NCAA rule. Right. But where a lot of the difference comes, when they get out on their own, the quarterback's throwing footballs, and they're working on things like that. But the biggie is film study. And this is one of the areas. It was really interesting watching the Cowboys absolutely decimate the Philadelphia Eagles. And we are broadcasting from the home of America's team. And so that was a very satisfying win for us. And I'm sorry to say that's just kind of the way it is. It will be interesting when the Cowboys go up and play New England, which frankly is struggling a little bit this year.
Yes, we are.
But the point I'm driving at is, again, back to film study. And Louis Reddick, who is a former NFL assistant general manager, he played college. He may have played in the NFL. I don't know. But he will throw these, what we would call warheads on foreheads, little knowledge bombs out. But he talked about how much Dak does film study. And they were talking about Casey Thompson doing these film studies. The players at the service academies, when they finish practice, they are too busy with their studies. They are carrying a full, and most of them are engineering majors of some kind or another.
They, at least I can speak for Army. I don't know about Air Force and Navy, but Army, every cadet is a minimum of an engineer minor of some kind. I'm assuming it's the same way.
Yep.
I don't know.
Absolutely. There is no kinesiology. There is no
well, you can major
sports
in
management.
Well, sports manager, no, but kinesiology, no, they do that because they have guys that go into physical therapy.
Okay.
Remember, we have the Marines don't have that, but Navy does.
The Navy does that for us.
Right. So they do have those programs there, but very much your point. Oh yeah. Oh, Army. Yeah, because we have a school down in Fort Sam Houston.
So to bring this full circle and back to the point that I was making is these kids do not have the advantages. It's not unusual. I think Casey Thompson already has his degree and is only taking 9 hours. I remember Matt Leinart's senior year. He was taking one class, and it was ballroom dance. I kid you not. To allow himself to be eligible as a student, he also, his senior year, had already earned his degree, and that's kind of one of the little gray areas. Well, if you got your degree, you can play, but you got to take at least one class or whatever the number is. Our service academy kids do not have that advantage. And so that makes their performance even more impressive.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, and just watching the game, it's like, man, I mean, up until the last play, you watch some games in college football and especially in the pros, when the game's out of hand, you could see the defeat. I will tell you right now, those service academy kids.
None.
They could be down 70-0, and they're playing the game like the score is 0-0, and they still have a fighting chance to win. And that's what impressed me about
so
them.
much about our kids that go to this, just going to the service academy. My roommate at basic school was Don Woolly Bear Woollett. And as we get into next year, closer and closer to Memorial Day, we'll talk a lot about carry the load. But Woolly Bear's one of the guys I carry. We lost him in Beirut. So my respect for the Naval Academy people, and I give them a hard time. I call the guys from West Point the Hudson High grads. I call the guys from the Naval Academy Canoe U. Trust me, it is said with nothing but love and respect. These guys
100%.
Schedule, I literally could not have done it.
Not only that, but you also add they got the military science portion of their school curriculum.
Well, that would have been cool.
But
it is a tough.
It's a grind for years.
Absolute grind. The football players don't have the time to put in to additional film study, and that creates so many competitive advantages. And so, just to do that, we've kind of moved off on topic, but a couple of last points before we get into the meat of, and we've got a really, really good show tonight. November 6th, we will be broadcasting live from Globe Life Park, where the Texas Rangers play.
Who?
It's some baseball team or something out there. I don't know. We've been to a couple of games, but, we were having too much fun in the suite to pay attention to the game. Did see the Texas Rangers put up a grand slam home run against the Houston Astros, against the Stros. That was great because our friend Jennifer was talking a lot of smack. And Jennifer, if you're listening, yes, I'm still going to give you a hard time about that. She came in talking all smack, and her husband, all Houston. They're both from Houston. Had all their Houston gear on, and boy, I tell you what, that Grand Slam went over the wall. It was just, it was the crowning blow of an amazing blowout. And of course, Texas is nowhere in Houston's league. But I don't care. For that one game when I was there,
they were there.
They were rock stars. So we're going to be at Globe Life Park November 6th. We're talking about doing a tailgate. So, JP, make sure the RV is ready. We'll be out there early. We'll be tailgating. Come by and see us as we get closer, and we'll know exactly where we are. We're going to have breakfast time. The game starts early. I want to say it's a 10:30 kickoff to be shown on the East Coast. It's the game between Air Force and Army. So be there early. We're going to have breakfast tacos, and then we're going to be there afterwards. And for any of our veterans listening, stop by. One of the things we want to do, we've got something special going on the 11th of November. We're going to do the second annual JP, Kathy, and the crew telethon. And we want veterans to stop by and do a 5 to 15 minute share your story. And you know what? I don't care when you served. Because the one thing I found, you can be a Cold War guy like me. You can be a Vietnam vet. John Keating was a Persian Gulf vet. We've all kinds of friends that were global war on terror. Everybody has a story, and some of them have nothing to do with the military. Like my son's favorite of mine is herding kangaroos in Australia with a helicopter. That was hysterical, and I'll share that story for our telethon on November 11th. But we want to jump into, this is kind of, we have a fondness for the Medal of Honor.
Yep.
Come to find out, the city of Gainesville, and I don't know if you know this,
I know,
is building a Medal of Honor museum.
I am aware of that.
So one of our guests was Medal of Honor recipient, Don Jenkins from Kentucky. And we are going to try to steal his amazing collection of weapons to have it displayed there. We've already started conversations about that.
You know who's from Gainesville? Why Gainesville? Come on.
Who's from Gainesville?
Audie Murphy.
No, he's not.
That's where he enlisted out of.
Oh, that's where he enlisted out of, because he's from Farmersville.
Yes.
You got to go about equal distance. Yes.
Sorry, I should
thought you were going to Audie Murphy, and I was like, no, you're wrong again. No. But he enlisted out of. Okay.
Sorry, clarification.
So, and we need to do an Audie Murphy show. We didn't do that in this last year. And again, for our listeners who's been with us from the beginning, somewhere in here, we've either passed or about to pass. Well, it must be, because our first Medal of Honor recipient we're going to talk about tonight, we did a show about. So I thought we started in October, but obviously it was, it must be.
We're coming up on a 1 year.
No,
getting close to our 1 year.
This is 1 year.
Yes.
This is 1 year because our first show, and if you'll throw up our, and I did give us a shout out to Nathaniel. He's our production guy tonight and been doing a great job for us. We appreciate him being here. JP and Kathy enjoy the fact that they're not putting up with our nonsense.
That's one way of looking at it.
I know what they say behind our backs, but that's okay.
We love them.
We don't really care. But we're going to throw up the picture, and we're going to talk about, because this was the story. Yep. This was our lead story. So we are celebrating our 1 year anniversary.
Yes.
Am I going to see it here? The picture of Douglas Murno. Monroe. There he is.
I like that one. I chose that one specifically.
There we go.
You like that one, huh?
I like that one. Now, the picture may not be coming through that clear, but this is not a navalman.
No.
This is signalman, first class Douglas Munro, M-U-N-R-O.
Now, question for you.
From the U.S. Coast Guard.
Now, the Navy is enlisted rank and also officer ranks, because captain in the Navy and a captain in the Army is slightly different.
So I'm going to come back to that.
All
I'll
right.
tangent, but after we tell this story, before we get on to our next,
All right.
Because I know where you're going, but you're going to ask me about the enlisted ranks and signalmen. I have no clue.
Because that's always confused me, Where does he fall on that?
No clue. I have never known, even though I spent a year of my
Are
life
they
on
chiefs in
Navy
the
boats.
Coast Guard also?
Yes.
Or- yeah.
Yeah. The
Then-
Coast
then he would
Guard
be an
and
E6
the
then.
Navy share the same rank structure.
Okay, so that would probably make him an E6, I would imagine.
So one of the things that the Navy and the Coast Guard does, and in this case, Douglas Munro was a signalman, but then he was assigned. So to tell a story, you will notice the Big Red One, not the Big Red One, but
That's Army.
the one that is Army. I said that poorly. The blue diamond with the red one in it is the 1st Marine Division, and the 1st Marine Division was the first Marines to invade Japanese-held territory at Guadalcanal. So one of the things that happened is they were moving everything ashore by small boats, by Higgins boats, and by landing crafts. And Douglas was assigned to the small boat detachment, and they had detached, and my understanding is some of them stayed with the Marines on the ground when the Navy turned tail from Guadalcanal and ran. They made a tactical decision. History showed it was the wrong decision. I sort of understand why the Admiral did it. The Admiral did get relief for that. It was not a good look for the Navy, but the Marines were literally existing off captured Japanese rations. This is a true story.
Yep.
And all of the construction they were able to do until they were resupplied, which was quite a few weeks, was captured Japanese building equipment. The key to taking Guadalcanal, and we don't have a map of it, and that's my fault. I should have gotten a map in here. But basically, it was close enough that had the Japanese gotten the air base built, they could have launched bomber attacks against Australia. So this was a critical battle. The Marines entered into it entirely too early. They weren't really quite ready for it. We hadn't done this. We had never done this scale of an amphibious landing before. The learning curve was huge, but a bunch of what we call the small boat drivers did not return to the ship. They were not going to leave the Marines behind, and Douglas Munro was one of them. So this is the story. The Marines are there. They tried to flank, using the boats, they tried to flank the Japanese. This went very badly. The Marines all got ashore and were being literally overrun. So Signalman First Class, Douglas Munro, was in charge of this detachment of boats. And they were getting the Marines off on landing craft, and he was in a Higgins boat, which had, and if you'll throw up that next picture, you'll see what a Higgins boat looked like. But it's got a 30 caliber machine gun on the front of it. And what he did is the last group, it's a painting that we'll throw up there. It's a rather famous painting, as we discussed earlier. Hollywooded it up just a little bit because he's a little better looking and a little beefier guy than he actually was. He was not a real big guy, but he had a heart that was 4 sizes too big. And standing in the bow is where the machine gun was mounted, and he ordered the Higgins boat between the last of the landing barges. There we go. It's up now. And you can see, and he's firing away, and this kind of a pretty accurate picture. He's trying to get between, literally put his life between the Japanese that were trying to overrun the Marines and the Marines that were trying to get off. And as the landing barges are trying to get off, they're extremely vulnerable. And he was mortally wounded. And with his dying breath, it was reported, "Did we get my Marines off?" The only member of the U.S. Coast Guard to ever earn the Medal of Honor. And to all of our Coast Guard friends out there, you guys go to sea when everybody else is heading for the hangars.
Yep.
You guys are pretty darn amazing. So, He's one of those stories that I want to make sure nobody ever forgets. We do focus a lot on Medal of Honor recipients. One of the reasons for that is not only are we getting the Medal of Honor Museum here, but I found out recently, just this past week, that Gainesville is building a Medal of Honor Museum as well. And if you've never been to Gainesville, they do a wonderful event. It was actually last weekend, and unfortunately I couldn't make it, where they have the Medal of Honor recipients in. They have them on a parade. One of the things that's just the absolute coolest thing, before we get to the second part of the show, is American Airlines flies them in, and they create and they drive up to Gainesville, which is up 35, and the roads are lined with people.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, you watch it, and it is your sense of just patriotism is just unbelievable. I mean, it's I personally have never been up there for Medal of Honor Week. It's definitely
you've got to go up there.
It's on my list of things.
We got to do that.
But I've watched on the news many times, and it's incredible.
It's an incredible week.
For small, I mean, keep it. Gainesville is
not a big
town, but I'll tell you what, they got big American pride.
They really do. They really do. It is amazing what they've done. They've got a Medal of Honor garden up there, which is well worth walking through. So what they're trying to create are reasons for people to come to Gainesville as Gainesville continues to grow. And I understand that, because at the same time, they are honoring some of our biggest heroes.
Oh. There are no bigger than our Medal of Honor recipients. And you know what? Some people may question it. Go ahead. Bring that argument on. I think we can more than argue that our Medal of Honor recipients are virtually second to none.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think without question any amazing thing. I have yet to meet one, and I continue to grow the number that I've met, and I'm humbled and honored. But I have yet to meet one that doesn't absolutely believe that medal belongs to everybody else.
You are saying the words that you hear almost uniformly by every Medal of Honor recipient. They basically say something to the fact that they're just a bearer of the award, because that day, any number of other members that were there could have just as easily been the recipient of that award. You know, I've never heard one say, "No, it was me." Not one has ever that I've met has ever said
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know?
They are such humble people. And that takes us into, and I'll set this up, and Andrew's going to talk more about this, made famous by the movie Black Hawk Down. And we're going to talk about it because this is the week of Black Hawk Down. And in and of itself, it is a worthwhile story to share. I thought the movie was incredibly well done. There were a couple of things we were talking about.
Hollywood always
Hollywoods it up a little bit.
Add their stuff, but they did keep with
it follows the story.
The story of what happened in there with Black Hawk Down. For those of you who don't know, early on, late 90s, President Clinton.
What year was it?
93.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was 1993.
93, sorry.
So, early.
93. Now,
No, wait a minute. If it was Clinton, I thought, that's right. 92. He was elected in 92. Okay, sorry for that brief interruption.
Yep, no worries. We had to do our math over here and work it all out. The U.S. military, now, here's one thing I don't know. You may know this. I know the Marines, were they there prior to the Rangers coming in as a peacekeeping force? After. All right, I knew they came in after. In fact,
no, wait a minute. They were there prior. There was a battalion of Marines there. It was the 15th MU. I think it was the 15th MU. But they came aboard ship.
Before they came, you do know that one of the Marines that was over there was Adid's nephew.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Interesting.
Later went over there and helped try to clean up.
We're talking about the city of Mogadishu,
which
in East Africa.
Back then, and that's one part the movie did depict very well, that was a definition of the Wild Wild West.
Oh, yeah.
Over there.
And kind of set the stage, the warlords were running the country.
No question about
The
it.
government had completely broken down.
What was resembling of a government was just really puppets.
It was a show. Yeah,
Yeah, they were there for just show. They were completely controlled by the drug lords, the warlords, and, you know,
so kind of like Afghanistan today.
more or less.
Yeah.
You know, so the Marines were in there. They tried running a peacekeeping mission. They pulled out. The Army sent in the Rangers and special ops teams to try to what their goal and attempt was to capture and neutralize Adid, the leader of the warlord
Right.
faction.
And that was the Black Hawk Down mission.
Exactly.
But what we were there doing
With all
was
the
trying to
peacekeeping, trying to
support
get-
the UN peacekeepers.
Which
were
was a
absolute joke.
It was a failure from the word go
Yeah.
in that sense. So the U.S. had conducted multiple operations, combination of both Ranger and Delta team operations prior to the quote-unquote Black Hawk Down.
You talked about the Rangers. Most people are familiar with Rangers. Since you brought up the Delta forces,
Yep.
talk just a second about who Delta is.
Well, technically Delta does not exist.
Yeah, this is true.
If you want to go with the Hollywood, Delta is the U.S. elite anti-terrorist, unit, much like unofficially SEAL Team 6 that technically does not exist.
No, SEAL Team 6 exists.
Not anymore. They disbanded it.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
well, officially on paper, whether they,
That's interesting.
I
I did not realize
there's
that
a
they
new
had disbanded
name.
that.
I can't remember what they call it. At
But
some point it became
the other thing
political
about
where
Delta,
someone.
whereas the SEALs, the Marine Raiders, the Marine Recon, and now everybody wants to be in the spec op world. Delta Force is also comprised, is not a,
No.
it is
it's
a
not-
de facto military unit. It is not an actual military unit, and its members come from all branches of the service.
Absolutely. It's the only one. And keep in mind, every one of our Tier 1 special units, they all have a unique mission and focus of what they are really good at and do. They have, SEALs work mainly out of the water.
Right.
That's where they, operate. Delta has its, element where it operates best. Mogadishu was one of those areas that they operate most effectively in. That being said, the mission was about 3 days prior to Black Hawk Down, as we know, going down on October 3rd. The U.S. and the Rangers, they conducted simulated missions, always at night. See, that's where some of the things went wrong with it. We got a tip on the early morning hours of October 2nd that Adid was going to be at a hotel. General Shepard made the decision, without consulting with higher-ups in the UN, we were going to do a daylight mission the exact same way we had done our nighttime mission prior to it.
Huge tactical error.
Huge tactical error. Everyone's heard the terminology, the U.S. military, we own the night.
Yep.
Very much so. We've got the equipment. We got specialties. We've got all the stuff that makes the nighttime fighting our baby.
Yep.
We own it. In the daytime, a lot of things that they did not take into account for. One, they can easily see us in the daytime coming in with the helicopters. Two, the time of day we went into attack, all the warlords and all the bad boys over there were all high on cha. Is that how it's pronounced?
I'm not sure.
It's a root, kind of like an LSD type drug that they all over there in that part, they chew on that. Well, that point of the day, they were flying high as can be. When they saw our helicopters coming, they knew something was up.
Yep.
And nothing.
Well, the other thing, and this is also depicted well in the movie, they had people watching the American commands.
Yep.
And they had people using cell phones to tell them, hey, the American helicopters are coming, and they're coming in force, and they're full of troops.
And that's where if we went at night, nobody would have seen us. again,
They would have hurt us.
possibly. Remember, we have the ability to disguise ourselves very well in the evening.
Well, and the other thing is they could have diverted out east and then bent back west without any problem.
So let's go down to the situation. We go in there. The target has been identified where the package was for us to deliver. We had a ground element that went in there, and we had our air element rangers go in there along with Delta to go capture and bring in the warlord Adid. Everything was going well up until the point when, like you said, all the locals, or high as can be, they started blocking off roads with firebombs and mocktail cocktails and making what would be a normal, inhibited road very inhibited with a lot of people. And keep in mind, we were outnumbered a lot.
Yeah.
Going there. You're talking about an entire city, a capital city of the area with nothing but warlords and the black market running all over the place. The wild, wild west.
Yep.
Well, prior to what the movie showed, we lost our first Black Hawk helicopter, went down. Now, we train for these types of contingencies, but what people don't realize is that while one went down, a second one was shot down.
Yeah.
But that's not the real problem that we had. 6 helicopters totally lost that day.
Yeah.
It's not depicted in the movie. That caused a lot of problems for us being able to get our troops out of there, especially because
Totally changes the logistics of the situation.
we did not have the UN approval. And to get the larger elements of the heavy armor to come in to help provide security for us when those situations went down. So now we have troops displaced in the city without the air support that they're used to having in daylight hours with literally thousands of hostile, hopped up on drugs, gun-toting individuals and warlords that would have given nothing more than to have an American, because the value of killing an American over there or capturing one was worth a lot of money in that part of the world. So, as we all know the story, 2 major helicopters went down. We lost a total of 19 good service members that day. One of the worst total loss of elite U.S. service members, one of which you know is from Kaufman, Texas.
Did not know that.
Jamie Smith.
Interesting.
You know which one he was in the movie? He's the one that depicted when they were trying to get the bullet out of his leg and close off the arterial artery.
Ah, yes.
It's from Kaufman, Texas.
No kidding.
Yep. So, back to our point. We're out there. Our troops are battling for their lives. One of our super helicopters was down. Whole crew was lost, minus the pilot,
Now,
Michael
when
Durant.
he says super helicopters, the larger Black Hawk helicopters, that were our primary transport helicopters. The other helicopter being used is they called them Little Birds. They were the small, basically OH-58s that would have a pilot or a co-pilot, and would hold 4 guys in the back.
They had just a pod
some
of
of them had-
rockets and
They had one or the other generally.
Yep. Well, our troops pinned down. They starting to run low on ammo, running low on water, and more importantly, running low on time.
Yep.
Well, we had one helicopter, the entire crew was lost. The second helicopter, most of the crew was lost, minus the pilot, Terry Durant. You can pull up Durant's picture if you get a chance. We were fighting fiercely to go rescue these men.
Remember, let's not look back. We got to look this way.
Yeah, you got to look that way. We're trying to rescue our men on the ground, because the military, we take pride in the sense that leave no man behind.
Nope. That has been a military ethos
for
centuries.
And we will lose a lot of men to save one and to bring them all home. And Terry Durant was that man we were prepared to risk it all to bring him home. That's Terry Durant. Terry Durant was captured. He was getting overwhelmed, surrounded on all sides, badly injured. I can't even list all the injuries. I believe both his legs are broken, ribs,
Yeah, he was a mess.
He was in rough shape, and you can tell by the picture he was not a happy camper.
No. And beat up afterwards.
Yes. Well, when the request came down from one of our other helicopters in the area, 2 Delta operators by the name of Gary Gordon and Randall Shugart. Both these men were, the only word I can use to describe them is warriors.
Yep.
There is probably not a more accurate term to describe either one of these men. They were warriors in every sense of the word. They requested not once, not twice, but 6 times to go in and provide covering support for Durant in order to buy time for one of the rescue teams to go in there and get them. Both these men knew, without question, the mission and the request that they were making was pretty much a death sentence.
Yep.
They knew it. Mm-hmm. Yet they still requested and volunteered to be dropped in and go and provide whatever support they could, hopefully hold off the enemy long enough for reinforcements to get in there. And they did one hell of a job.
Yeah. And by the way, if anybody is curious, this picture was taken at their base before they deployed.
Yep.
Which is why you see them together.
Both these men were best friends. They went in there. And
I like their mustaches, too.
Yeah.
Good-looking mustaches.
Good mustaches, absolutely. Shugart and Gordon went in there, and while it's difficult to know the number of casualties that they inflicted each, there were literally hundreds of dead Somalis all around that crash site. Both men bodies were riddled with bullets. They fought to their very last full measure. They went down like warriors.
Yep.
They went down with their boots on. Yep. And because of their actions, both men were posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. They were the first Medal of Honor awarded since Vietnam at that point. Since then, obviously, we've had about 14 since.
I don't know the number, but we are both privileged to know Sal Guenta, who was the first
living
Medal of Honor recipient since Black Hawk Down.
No, Vietnam. Gordon and Shugart were.
Oh, that's right.
Possibly.
Since Vietnam, he was the first living. Excuse me, I said that wrong.
Gary Gordon and Randall Shugart were here. They died as heroes. They went in there to do everything they could in a situation that, for all rights and purposes, was lost cause.
Yep.
Eventually, the U.S. did get approval through the UN to send in reinforcements to rescue these men. And you'd think after an all-night battle, nonstop fighting, out of water, nearly out of bullets, surrounded by thousands, the war, it'd be over for them.
And I wonder, I have this question.
Yep.
Has anybody ever interviewed General Stilwell and asked him, and it's me.
Right.
And I had this when I was in the service and when I was flying. One of the problems they had in Vietnam is they created artificial lines on the map. One of those was being into Cambodia. So we went into Cambodia, it was this real big deal. It's like, hey, there's a war going on. If they're going to be in Cambodia, we're going to go to Cambodia. And, if that messes with some country's sovereignty, deal with it. I am, and I've always been absolutely shocked that Stilwell didn't order the heavy armor convoy to go in to rescue all of his people and say, you know what, if you're going to court-martial me, go for it. I'm going to go get my people. And by the time anybody could have stopped that had gotten in and gotten out. And maybe that's not unfair, and maybe I don't know the story well enough. And I get following orders. But orders in Mogadishu, and we talked about orders, right. We really should talk about rules of engagement.
Absolutely.
The order in which when you're in a area of operation, When can you engage bad guys? When can you not? When can you do this? When can you do that? And generally speaking, the rules of engagement are pretty clear. But I'm in a situation like that where Stillwell had already screwed up not going in at night, which would have made so much more sense. I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to go get my guys. And I know of stories of guys who have chosen to save others, to risk their lives for others, even when they've been ordered not to. There's a book called Devotion that was about the Korean War. I won't go into that tonight. Yes, I do have a copy of it. And yes,
Shocker.
it is autographed in the library. It is a great book. And I won't go in and we'll do this story at some point in the future because it is a great story. And we'll talk about my friend Gunny Parrish, who was a flying sergeant in Korea. And that in itself is a whole great story. But guys have said, you know what? That's a brother of mine there. I don't care what the orders are.
Deal with the
I'm going to go
later.
get him. And if you
And
want to
that's what
court-martial me,
and Gordon did.
Yeah.
You know, they went in there. They were going to go in and come hell or high water.
Yeah.
They were going to get.
Now they did, so that everybody is clear. They did in fact go in. On they were blessed to go in.
Finally,
so
again, I
six-
think they would have gone in. They would have found a
I
way.
don't think there's any question they'd have found a helicopter pilot to drop them in there.
Yep, and they're now. And here's where the story gets even uglier.
Uh-oh.
When our men finally got the heavy armor to go get them out, there wasn't any room for the men to go into the vehicles.
Yeah.
An entire platoon had to do what was known as the Mogadishu Mile.
Yep. That is very well depicted in the movie, by the way.
1.3 miles.
Wow.
Running at full speed after an all-night battle engagement. And they weren't just running behind the vehicles. They were running and still engaging the enemy. It wasn't just a run. It was a run, shoot, move, communicate, and get the heck out of Dodge.
So one thing I want to throw in, and I want our listeners, those that are not familiar, a lot of our veterans are very familiar with Black Hawk Down, but for those that aren't, keep in mind Mogadishu was a city where more than half the people were armed.
Oh,
people were literally
everyone,
carrying
yeah.
AK-47s,
RPGs, whatever.
all kinds of equipment. And the other thing is it was open season on Americans.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter what warlord tribe these guys were part of, or even if they weren't part of any of it, they were shooting at Americans.
Yep.
And these guys had to literally run out of the city. There wasn't any room. I was like, oh my gosh. And the movie does, as I said,
phenomenal job depicting that. But what they did was the enemy did capture, like I said, while Sugar and Gordon were both killed, the enemy captured Terry Durant. They held him for 7 days as a capture, and eventually the U.S. diplomats were able to work a way to get him out. But for 7 days, he was a POW. Well, actually, would he have been considered POW? Yeah, I guess. I mean,
he would have been in a POW status because he was functioning as a combat soldier in the U.S. military.
Right.
Whether they honored that or not, and they really probably didn't.
There was no. I don't think anyone in Mogadishu ever read the Geneva Convention.
No.
I'm pretty sure those words never hit the.
And this is another thing. I want to talk about Mogadishu in Ethiopia. One of the
Somalia.
I'm sorry, Somalia, next to Ethiopia, one of the poorest countries on the planet.
No question about it.
One of the reasons the Somali pirates did what they did, it was better than any alternative they could find.
Yeah, that was due to lack of government and
No government. There's no source of economic revenue. There's no way to feed families. Incredibly poor country. Most of these guys were illiterate. which is a major problem in that part of the world. That's the world's highest illiteracy rate is on those countries that are part of the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea. I can't remember all of the bodies of water over there, but all of them around there, incredibly poor, no resources at all. This is what they know.
They're bred to be like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just there is nothing else. It's rival gangs fighting rival gangs. There is no government as we know it. It is, as you said, it was worse than the Wild West ever was.
Yep, no question about it. And it was literally one of the places that the moment we leave, all the crazies come running right back in, and there's no stopping it.
Massive fights for power.
And you can't keep track of whoever. You could be in charge today and gone tomorrow, because guess what? Someone in your own organization may get that, hey, I want to be the big dog today. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, and it's funny, and you can tell how impoverished it is, because for the most part, China's not fighting over it. We're not fighting over it anymore.
Yeah, nobody wants it.
Nobody wants it. And if you thought Afghanistan was a third-rate country, then Somalia, Ethiopia, some nations like this are fourth-rate countries. Yep. And it is sad, but it is reality. And the thing that we really wanted to do tonight was to honor particularly three men.
Yep.
Seaman First Class Douglas Monroe,
Master Sergeant Gary Gordon, and Sergeant First Class Randall Shugart.
Absolute American heroes, and each one of them died for his brothers.
That's pretty much the best segment of how we can describe these three great American heroes.
Recommend strongly watching Black Hawk Down. A lot of the Hollywood movies stray a little too far from the story. This one does a pretty good job. As you said, we lost more helicopters than they really talked about. But the focus of the movie was very much the rescue efforts for the first and second Blackhawks that went down. We're going to wrap up today's show. We've got a great show coming next week. We're going to talk about, and it's appropriate that you are wearing your Come and Take It patch.
I wore that purposely for you.
There we go. Very nice. I like that. We're going to tell the Come and Take It story. This is I don't think those who fought in the Texas Revolution were considered U.S. veterans ever. But we're going to talk about
that's
some
a good question. Yeah,
Texas veterans.
Why not?
The Confederate veterans are, in fact, considered U.S. veterans. They can be buried in the U.S. Veterans Cemetery. Their families are eligible for pensions, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to debate the pros and cons of the Civil War tonight.
We have plenty of other shows to do that.
Plenty of other shows to do that. But we're going to talk next week about really the start of the Texas Revolution, which was Come and Take It. We're going to tell that story. It is an awesome story. We're going to talk more about our November 6th. Do not forget that. And I want a little reminder for everybody before Andrew signs us out. Remember November 11th, we're going to have a phenomenal telethon. And if you want to be a part of it, reach out, contact us, put a note in the Facebook or YouTube or whatever, and we'll reach out to you. We would love as many veterans as possible to be a part of our veteran telethon.
Absolutely. Well, for Chuck and I, hoorah, hoorah. See you all next week.